everybody. I'm Faye. I'm an alcoholic. And I've been sober since July 21st of 2018. I'm going to get a little situated here. I'm nerdy, so I have things that I want to hold here so I don't forget things. And I have my eye on the clock, which I think I can kind of see. I'm going to try to be sober within 15 minutes. So we'll see if I can do that. Thank you, Kathleen. And I'm really glad that people started teaching me here that I'll feel like a little bit less of a shit show if I offer to help somewhere. Because I always felt like a shit show and have been a shit show for the most part. And that really is the trick we learn here, is that if we get busy and start helping, that we get some relief. It's one of the first magic tricks that I was taught here. So I'm going to start with way back when, and I always get a little bit emotional when I go childhood stuff. Just, I don't know. I feel like other people do a better job at that, but I always get kind of like, well, my feelings are here. So I might need to move some chairs really fast during this part. But I'm going to go into my childhood a little bit more just because I was so convinced when I got here, when I finally realized I was an alcoholic, and I was like, shit, I need this place. I hope I'm allowed to curse up here. Okay. I was like, shit, I need this place badly. By the time I realized that, I was pretty certain I couldn't access it. Like, I was pretty certain that I couldn't handle human intimacy enough to have to be in a group, enough to stick with something, enough to actually get what you guys seemed like you had. I was pretty certain, and Kathleen was a big part of, just by one of those little things you just say, just a big part of convincing me that that there can be healing here, that we can find it, we can access it, even when we think we can't access it. So I grew up obsessed with alcohol, actually, but in a different way. Like, my parents were alcoholics and had both been to rehab, and I remember just thinking, I never want to be like them. Like, I'm just going to grow up and do it all differently. And that became kind of my thing. I mean, it was kind of my obsession, was I was sure they were messed up and that the reason that life was painful was because they wouldn't stop drinking. I believed that they probably could if they loved me. And because they didn't love me enough, so because I wasn't lovable enough deep down, I just wasn't worth it, and our family wasn't worth it, and nothing must be as special as like alcohol was to them. I had a little brother who's disabled, and I kind of thought of him as like mine, I guess. Like, I took a caretaker role, of course. Can you hear me okay? Am I okay? I took this caretaker role. I just feel like it feels weird. Okay. I feel better. I do kind of like a microphone. At my group, it has, this one's really good too, but ours does have a glitter light thing. Just saying, if you need a new one, I know where you can get the glitter light one. But anyways, I would kind of take this caretaker role over my little brother, Tyler, who has cerebral palsy. And this was just I was just like your typical little Al-Anon kid. I was like, is anyone paying the bills? I don't know. The lights are off. This is scary. Did you keep your job? What about Tyler? Did someone change his diaper? And I remember like pushing him in his wheelchair over to the McDonald's play place and like dragging him out of his wheelchair. And I would like drag him through the play place. And the people there were probably like, what the hell is going on with this kid and her brother? And we just had that house that the police would come in the middle of the night, and we'd move in the middle of the night. We'd move in with a new guy. Eventually my brother got removed from the home, and he came here to Texas to live with my dad. We were in Kansas, and that's why I live here now. And that was heartbreaking for me, and I kind of lost part of my purpose then. And then one day I switched schools again, and this school counselor was like, your mom is an alcoholic. And she said her dad was an alcoholic. And that was the first time I was ever like, wait, I really, really could do something else. Like, I really could grow up and be something different from this. And I say all of this to just paint a picture of how much effort, energy, heart, soul I had wrapped up in believing that I could have power over alcohol. Like I believed it. I did come to sort of believe, as much as you can believe without having alcoholism, that my mom couldn't control her drinking and that my dad couldn't control his drinking. I did, and that gave me a lot of relief. But I believed that I could, and that I would grow up and do that. And that became just kind of my thing. We just continued to kind of have that house, like crazy things like a stabbing and a sniper team having to surround the place, like crazy shit. Just if you're curious, the guy that the sniper team had to surround did have a mullet. I'm not endorsing nor opposing mullets. I'm just stating a fact that there was one there that day. And one day, finally, I said something to my mom and her boyfriend. Like, they said, "You're selfish." And I was like, "If I was selfish, I'd turn in all your friends because I know where to buy all the drugs." And it turns out that's not well received. And and so they were like, "Here's what a narc is. Narcs get killed." And I was like, "Well, that's mean." And so I told my school counselor, I was like, "This is what my mom said." And I mean, I do think I was like, "Am I finally getting out of here?" And I did. They were like, "Yeah, that's bad. CPS is coming over." And so that's when my mom went to rehab. And I remember thinking it's going to work, and it didn't, of course. Well, I say it didn't, of course. It didn't in her case. I went that summer to my dad's. He ends up being on meth and had been kind of the strong one. And I know. It was a tough couple of years. And my stepmom was like, "You need to talk to your dad about, don't do meth." And I said, "Okay." So I'm here in Texas. My brother's here, and my mom just got a rehab. I'm like 12, and I was like, "Dad, don't do meth, or I'm not coming back," like whatever I was told to say. And he was like, "You're going home right now." And so he got me a plane ticket, and he sent me home. And I go home. My mom's back with the boyfriend. My mom drinks again, and I finally started to get the fuckets at this point. And it was just like, I don't know. And I became really obsessed with dying, and I became really obsessed with just kind of like getting out of my body. And for me, most of the time that was food. I did like I was stealing my mom's alcohol, which was pretty easy to do. But I don't remember having the feeling that I came to love so much, that feeling of, like, there was that excitement leaving my body feeling, but what I was really seeking in the end of my drinking was just like, get me out of here, like numbness, just please make it stop. And I don't remember seeking that so much. I remember just wanting to be gone. I guess they are kind of the same. And around that time, I ended up trying to kill myself and ended up in the mental hospital, because that's what they send you when you do that. Back then, I don't think now. I think now they get like 2 days or something. But they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know where to put me. And that was when they decided no longer are you going to live with your mom. And so I was lucky. My grandparents were able to sign up as foster parents. And then but I just started running away from everything at that point. Like, they wanted to show up for me, and I just couldn't really handle it. And so my mom came back. She was like with a traveling fair at the time. And and she came back and she said, "Grandma wants you to live with us." And the funny thing is, as I worked the steps later, I realized that probably wasn't even true that happened. But just her saying that, I was like, I didn't ask my grandma, is that true? I had a car by then, and I just put what I could fit in my Geostorm, and I left. And I ended up, like, a couple of people offered to let me stay, and I just started staying places. And I kind of knew nobody would stop me because I was old enough by then, and where are you going to take me now? And I just, what I wanted away from the feeling of not belonging. And it turned out to be something I chased a lot with drinking too. Just wanting that feeling to stop, just this feeling of I'm not sure where I go. And being invited to go places, good places. My grandparents' house was stable. But I couldn't stay. Like, I couldn't stand it. My skin was on fire. And I couldn't even put words to that until after drinking, because then I remember what it felt like to have my skin on fire when I wasn't drinking, when I wasn't taking pills. I just felt like I was just going to freak out. And I was able to look back and go, oh yeah, this is a feeling that I had for a long time, in a different way. But you know how it is, we get to do this deal, and then we look back and you just can't really figure out like where the malady was just a part of you and where it was kind of contributed to through life events and things. And maybe it doesn't matter. I'm not sure it does matter, for me at least. It just feels like it all kind of goes together. So I ended up having another group, a friend of the family, like sign up and become foster parents, and I went and stayed with them. And again, same thing. I couldn't stand it. I just couldn't stand being in my skin there. I just couldn't. And this is part of why this comes back to AA for me. I couldn't stand the goodness. Like, I hated it. I hated it so much. I wanted it so much, but like I just felt like it wasn't going to work out, and probably it's not true, and probably it's about to run out, and I don't want to get attached before it runs out. And I didn't even think that far into it. I hated the feeling of starting to feel like things were going to be okay. I hated that feeling, and I started just hating feeling. And I started eating a lot, and I gained like 75 pounds. I think that is a part of how my alcoholism kind of worked too. I just kind of ate a lot. And then I ended up I'm going to kind of wrap this part just before up. I ended up getting married. I kind of just left my feelings and started just kind of living this frozen lifestyle the best I could, and couldn't show up for it. Started telling myself that it was because I maybe should have dated a woman instead. And luckily I had a therapist at the time who was super into advocacy and like super, and she was like, that may be true, but it's not why you can't emotionally show up right now. Like, you've got issues. And and I'm really glad she said that, so that I didn't make that my thing right then, because I would have done anything to make something my thing, so it's your fault I can't show up emotionally. Alcohol was just an unpredictable friend for a really, really, really long time for me. And I remember my mom saying, and by this time my mom's like pretty far gone, and I remember my mom saying, well, I did, when I went through my divorce, I was drinking more, and I did name my plan as the wine plan. But I thought I was good for that, because I'm not an alcoholic, because I control my drinking. I have power over alcohol. And so I was on the wine plan. Also, by then I had joined Al-Anon. And so I was like, not only am I on the wine, I was so self-righteous. I was like, not only am I on the wine plan and it works for me because I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm in Al-Anon anyways. And so I would definitely know if I was an alcoholic. And I remember dating somebody right after my divorce, and they were like, are you sure it's a good idea to be on the wine plan when both your parents have been in rehab, and also now you're on the wine and Benadryl at night plan? And just like, and I would keep adding things. I was like then Winadryl wouldn't make me fall asleep, as genius as it was. I thought I was just a life hacker. Then I had Winadryl Awana, Winadryl benzos. And I just kept having to add like word parts in order to fall asleep at night. But still, it was still just like an unpredictable friend. But what I was experiencing was that I had this malady, and it continued to grow as I continued to work harder and harder and harder. And my hard work wasn't able to keep up with the malady growing. And I, to this day, don't really understand why then. I don't really get it. And I don't, again, know that I need to ever get that. But I kept seeking more and more and more. Like, I wasn't some fun alcoholic. I wasn't like the party girl. I was like the person like this, you know, that was, I'm trying so fucking hard. And I ended up, I just lost my train of thought, where I was somewhere between like Wine-a-Drill and, okay, I'm about to find it again. So I ended up finding myself in this place where I had done tons of seeking, and I was just not able to keep up with what was like going on inside me. I just couldn't do it. Like, I'm talking a lot of seeking. I did transcendental meditation, signed up for it. That shit's expensive. And like, I'm a teacher. That was a lot of money for me. And I still couldn't, I was like, this is going to do it. Like, something in me wasn't okay. And I didn't know how to describe it. And a therapist every now and then would say, maybe it's depression, but I can't explain it. I knew I didn't have depression. I knew it. But something was more and more wrong. And there was trauma that was needing to be unfolded. And that might be a part of that too. You know, again, I don't know that it matters. But then I went and I had done so much therapy, and I would always like try to find a new kind of therapy and then go in deep with that. And I thought I was getting better, but somehow some part of me was getting worse all the time. I was always getting dumped by Al-Anon sponsors. Like, none of them like me. And I couldn't figure, and sometimes I was getting dumped, and sometimes I thought I was dumped, and then I later find out that I did that thing again where I just ran away and thought they left me, and they'd be like, oh, it was that thing. But to me, I only believed it because I saw that it was a pattern, and I'd be like, well, they're probably right, but I have no recollection why that's the thing. Just that, like, to me, it looked like they left, and then later they said they didn't. And so I was like, well, that's happened enough times that it must be true. And then one of my Al-Anon sponsors was like, I'm just waiting to find out what your addiction is. And I remember being like, I'm waiting to find out what your addiction is. And and I found myself finally, I did go out and end up in some long relationships with women too, thinking maybe that was why I couldn't, engage in relationships. And it turned out I had the same issues followed me everywhere. So then I'm like, I'm not going to really date anybody. I'm just going to try to like survive. I'm just going to try to be as numb as possible, and yet like live my professional life if I can. My professional life was weirdly okay because, like, I've heard a lot in here. I was able to kind of, I'm sure this had a time limit on it, but I was so far able to kind of compartmentalize, and like that little piece of my life was like going well and it fit my passion. So I'm like going out and presenting on social emotional learning for schools and teaching teachers about that. And I'm so excited about that. And then I'm going home and stepping over dog shit and like takeout boxes and just living in total squalor and confusion, just like, why can't I get it together? Like, why is everything so confusing? And at this point I had said I wasn't going to date, but then I was sort of dating this girl, Amy, who lived in Austin, and she is an alcoholic and not in AA at the time. And I was like, you have a deadly disease. Why wouldn't you be in Alcoholics Anonymous? And after a while, and so we would talk like every night, and I'm like trashed, blacking out, and I have no idea. Like it literally didn't know. Like I don't have the story of like I tried so hard to stop. I didn't have any idea, like zero ideas. My self-righteousness was so far beyond like my ability to believe that I could be an alcoholic, and that has a lot of dark, sad things tied up in all of that. I got a lot freer when that became untrue for me. But I remember Amy was like, so sometimes, Faye, when we talk, you don't remember our conversations like a lot. And remember when we went to the Bon Iver concert and you don't really remember being there? And I remember being like certain that she was gaslighting me. And I was like, yep, this is so alcoholic of her. She's gaslighting me because she doesn't want to go to AA like an alcoholic would do. And she's gaslighting me and telling me that I'm an alcoholic so that she doesn't have to face that she's an alcoholic. And I was convinced of that. I sent her articles. I convinced her she was gaslighting me. She decided she really needed help. I mean, I realized very convincing, and I was certain of it. And then she brought it up another time, and I did feel guilty because I was like, I don't remember anything, she says. And that is confusing to me. And I didn't know what blacking out even was. Even all those years in Al-Anon, I didn't understand. I didn't pick it up. And even growing up in alcoholism, and even having had blacked out many, many times, I didn't understand it somehow. And I didn't understand that you could still, I thought you were like passed out. I just didn't get it. And so I was like, oh yeah, I do that. And I remember telling her, I was like, you know what I think it is? I think, and I really believe this too. I was like, I think that we are just connected, like spiritually. And that when we talk at night while I'm having wine Benadryl, I am transcending space and time with you. And therefore, I simply cannot remember our conversations because time is a construct. And and I really believed that too. Like, these are the things that made more sense to me than that any of my problems could be related to alcohol. Now, at this time, my mom is going downhill big time. I'm looking at her like, how could you let this happen to your life? You gave up everything. And still not seeing like the correlations there. I finally end up so dark at this time period that I go to, I had gotten another Al-Anon sponsor and was like, well, I hadn't had a sponsor for a minute because I was like done with people mostly. And at this time, Amy was the only person in my life. I'd cut everybody out. I'd just like you here and here. And I didn't know that was a thing either. All my friends I cut out. I didn't want anything to do with God or spirituality anymore, only neuroscience. And I'm not saying neuroscience isn't a better God for someone else, but it just didn't work for me. And I was not okay. And I remember spending my birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas alone this one whole year. I didn't want to do anything. But I would talk to Amy because she would kind of she lived far away. I think that was part of it. And I just remember Googling, do people all become suicidal the older they get? Because that was my experience, was there must be something you hit where you just want to die. And I'm there. I don't want to live on earth. And I remember being afraid that if I killed myself, what if I just was reborn again and had to do it all over again? Or just what if you just cycle through it over and over again? And by this time I'd even done Vipassana, that 10-day meditation thing, and I still just couldn't. I was not okay. And so I got this other Al-Anon sponsor, and I got her to agree to never make me talk about anything spiritual. I was done with all that. And and so she was okay, and that didn't go well. And so then I was really, 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 really in trouble. Again, I look back, obviously I had a drinking problem. I was taking tons of pills too. But everything I was doing, I was following the rules on paper, and that had been so important to me. I took a lot of pills, but I didn't take more than I was given, actually. And I didn't do them the way they were really told to me, but the way I was breaking the rules were kind of defendable in a way, in my mind, it was pretty easy to draw these lines. And then I didn't, because of those, I didn't have to drink anything during the day, on the weekdays at least. And yet I didn't have to have my feelings at work. And so finally I got really, 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 really desperate, and I did pray. And I remember my house was a mess. I remember realizing my dog was too skinny. I'm like a huge dog lover. Like, that's my thing. And someone pointed out that my dog got out, and someone picked him up and was like, "What's wrong? Your dog is too skinny." And I was like, "Oh my God, like my dog is too skinny." Like, I just didn't have any idea. And like, what was going on? And so I prayed, like, fucking help, like, if you're real, which you're probably not. And I got something. It was like, it told me two things. One, do this course thing I started doing, and two, get another Al-Anon sponsor. And so I said, I went to the group I had gone to for Al-Anon, and by then I was going to one that was kind of like, I wanted to be as anonymous as possible there, which I'm glad I could there. That's all I could handle right then. And I was like, okay, stupid voice, if you're real, then make someone shiny or something, because I don't know who to pick. And someone got shiny, like, it was like a thing. And so I was like, okay, if she comes back, and I knew who she was, but I was like, if she comes back, if she's the one who comes back from the bathroom next, then I'm going to ask her. And she was. And so I did. And she says, I can't sponsor you because I've been in AA forever too, and I've got all these sponsees. And I was like, she's like, I'll be your friend. And so by then I heard the voice. She was shiny. I was like, okay, when can you hang out? And she was like, later. And I was like, what about sooner? And I think I made her have to love me or something, because she finally agreed to be my sponsor. And one day we're probably like, I sound like I was all grateful. I wasn't. I was a real huge pain in the ass. And so technically she's my Al-Anon sponsor. And I have not told her that, hey, you're all I have, and there's a gateway to hell inside my body. Like, I just seem like a normal Al-Anon person. And so I was like, one day we're at breakfast, and she's like, well, we're going to go pray the third step prayer. And I was like, I don't really pray. And she wouldn't do it. She was like, well, it's okay to pray to nothing. And okay, wait, I want to get out at the pray to nothing part. I want to get out this part right here of the big book, because this became true for me. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. I did not believe, and I don't even know if it's fair to say I was willing to believe, and that gives me a lot of hope, and I love sharing that, because all I really needed was to be willing to be willing to be willing. Like, it was some kind of shadow of willingness. And she said, if you're going to work with me, you need to pray the prayers. You don't have to believe them. And we're getting ready to go pray that. And before then, she says, before we go any further on the work, you've talked about these pills you're taking. What if you took a break from them? And I was like, well, it's funny that you say that. I mean, okay, I had no idea what I was about to be in for. Of course, I thought I could quit any of it. And I was like, okay. And then I said, since you're an alcoholic, it might be helpful for you to know that I can't do things like go to happy hour now, because if I drink, I keep drinking, and I'm not like an alcoholic or something. And I just started kind of explaining things like that. And she goes, are you saying you have the phenomenon of craving? And I was like, no, I'm not having cravings. Because like a lot of people, that's what I thought craving was, something like I'm sitting there wishing my coffee was like whiskey. And I was cool right then that my coffee was coffee. I was going to have whiskey later that day. And she taught me what the phenomenon of craving was. And I remember thinking, okay, so I guess according to AA, I'm an alcoholic then, but I know I'm not an alcoholic, so AA must not be right about that. And like, I just couldn't conceive of it. And we went in our car and we prayed I was pretty shaken, honestly. And we prayed the third step prayer at that point. And I remember thinking, that was my first spiritual experience, I think, for real. I remember thinking, the bondage of self is me. That's what's my problem. I could feel that in my body. Like when relieve me of the bondage of self, I was like, please, like, relieve me of the bondage of self. And I don't know what God is, but I know what bondage of self is. I could feel that. And I wanted it to go away really badly. And we ended up working through the first 5 steps together. And it was interesting. We had a lot in common, like weird things in common, where I was like, yeah, my stepdad threw the cat into the wall and it broke the wall. And she was like, my stepdad threw the cat into the wall and it broke the wall and the cat died. Like, it was just so many things like that. And I'm glad God gave me that, because I had so little faith that I kind of think I needed those kind of synchronicities, the evidence of God to kind of keep me going through. But I ended up really focusing on that connection a lot more than on the recovery of it. Like, I think I was so just like empty at that point. And so just, I don't know, I can't explain it. And we ended up working steps 1 through 5. And my 4th step was very much columns 1 through 3. Like, it was like heavy. Here's what happened to me. Oh my gosh, that happened to you too. And nothing she did. It was just me. That's what I did. And so we finished 5, and I'm like a raw nerve. People say things like, do you feel so much better after you shared all that? No, I didn't. I didn't feel better. I felt worse. And so I ended up doing the thing again. I started like picking problems, and I think I picked a fight with her, and then she was like, this might not work. And I was like, oh, I can't believe everybody's such an abandoner. Of course we did my 5th step, and now she's saying this isn't going to work. And I cut her off. And then I was like, fine, and I was certain she cut me off. That was another one I had to go back and realize later. And fast forward, I ended up with a new sponsor, of course, and ended up now have a great friendship with a woman who helped me get sober and got me as far as she could. And I ended up hugging the book like big time this time. And I ended up really having to learn the lesson that this sobriety is about my spiritual fitness is about me and God, and like nobody can fuck it up for me. Only I can. Nobody's responsible for it but me. And it doesn't matter what I've been through. It doesn't matter anything. But that was a hard sell for me. Like, I was really, really scared at this point that I wasn't going to be able to do this. And at this point, I'm now realizing, wow, this really got me. Like, I tried so hard. It came in through the back door in a tiny window and got me good. And I didn't know I was drowning until I was like way up to my neck. And at this point, now my mom is homeless at the time. And I'm like freaking out because I'm thinking, how did I get this? How did I get sobriety? And she didn't get it. And I was like, I totally get how she was fooled. Like, I get it now. But there's nothing I can do to tell. Like, do I go tell her? Like, hey, I see how you got fooled. You don't even know you're an alcoholic. I get it now. You didn't pick alcohol over me like I always thought. It picked you. It picked you. I don't know why it picked us both. And somehow I got this special combination of grace that means I get this. Why? Like, I don't know. We don't know. There but for the grace of God go I, but I don't know why. And I don't get to know why. And so I was heartbroken in that period to send her from my house. It was always my fear, from my house to out there. And I had to do it. There was no other way. And I remember just being like, I can't believe I'm living through this. And I was, and it was because of AA. And what I learned here, that I was able to kind of handle that. So when I was working the steps with that next sponsor during this time, I also started doing a lot of two-way prayer. I started doing that as part of kind of my daily 11th step work, which she started me in right away. It was just like, jump right into this. You've been kind of hanging on too long now, like you're in trouble. And so you might like two-way prayer. And so that's been a really big part of my kind of daily work. And then I threw myself into column 4 when I did my 4th column, like at a whole new level. I started reading about it constantly, listening to every speaker tape there was, like getting really granular in the big book about it. And I became really determined to look at it in an entirely different way. Like not only what's my part and how did I get the ball rolling, but because I had so much self-righteousness tied up in everything, I needed to really look at like, how can I look at you in another way? How can I really unfold this until I can see you through God's eyes, until I'm free? Just keep going until I'm free. So now, and that's how I do column 4 to this day. Like if I'm not free yet, I'm not done yet. Like I got to keep going because my mind will get sick fast. And my ego and all those manifestations of self will rebuild themselves so quickly, and I'll be right back in that miserable place again, that place where alcohol can so insidiously like find its way into the driving seat of my life when I think that anything but that is in the driving seat. And one thing I'll share, when I had done that version of the 4th step, I made a point of really praying, like, show me what to put on this. And one of the things was that I had found my baby books in the trash when I was a kid, and I was like, mine and my brother's. And I was so sad when I found them. I found them and I just took them out and I put them in some desk somewhere. And I remember just being like, I didn't want to tell anybody. It was that sad where you don't even want to tell anybody, you're like, you just feel kind of worthless, and I didn't want anyone to know I found them, but I didn't want them to be in the trash. And I pushed my feelings down all the time, so I didn't really ever experience that feeling. And when I prayed, I got to go ahead and feel that and become free around that. And so I did. And what was interesting is maybe 2 weeks later, my mom, after my 5th step, going over this, my mom, who now I moved 30 times before, when I went to college, that was 31. So my mom has moved like a bazillion more times than that, like constantly, always in the middle of the night. And sometimes with sniper teams, and then U-Hauls, and then we don't know where the U-Haul is, and like, who knows? In all of that, I got this package, and it was my baby hat from the hospital and my brother's baby hat from the hospital. And like, I was so convinced that she didn't love me and that kind of nobody did, on some level. And somehow the magic of the steps done through desperation, finally I had the gift of desperation. It kind of seemed like I had it for a minute before then, but I couldn't hold on to it. And I held on to the gift of desperation, and I believe it stirred up some energy. And somehow she came up with these things and decided to mail them to me. And it just blew my mind. And it really gave me evidence of God to continue on and to continue this work. And there was, it's just been a continuing unfolding like that ever since, just like getting free around stuff that really held me in bondage. And like, for example, with my grandmother, later going, oh my gosh, she probably never said she wanted me to move out. Like, I probably just couldn't look at that because of how sad I guess I was. And I just guess that as the steps free away those manifestations of self, the healing that's already kind of waiting to be, that like natural state of being, that spiritual God consciousness just kind of becomes, maybe it's not that it becomes, it just, we realize that it's there. And since then, the way I do my like daily stuff is still pretty much hugely two-way prayer. I also love to go straight from 86 to 88. I'm kind of like a fundamentalist in that way, partly because I worked so hard in the kind of adjacent like work and got nowhere for so long, I do tend to just keep pretty close to the book. And in sponsoring has been really beautiful for me too. I, of course, was really afraid to sponsor at first. I didn't want to do it. I really wanted some like shit show teenager to sponsor the first time. And I didn't get that. I got this like woman from my community who intimidated me. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And what I ended up finding, what I know a lot of people in here know, is that I continued to get gifts of healing and sponsorship that I didn't expect. Like, I knew I'd get out of my head. Like, well, that's one of the first tricks we learned, but I didn't know that I would get healed more. Like, the first time I watched this mom that I got to sponsor freeze up when it was time to work the steps around her kids that she had lost, she couldn't do it. She froze. And I needed to go like meet her and sit with her. That was the only way she could even write it out. It was so painful for her. And it healed me around my mom. I was like, oh my gosh, I thought it was nothing to her. Her daughter probably thought it was nothing to her, but I saw what she let me see, which was that it's so not nothing. And then the other thing is that I was really surprised to find that when you know someone really well, you just fall in love with them. Like, you just do. You love them so much. Like, no, even if you kind of weren't sure you liked them when they first like asked you, and you were like, I don't know. I don't know. You just love them so much. And it's taught me that then, like, those moments where I'm like thinking I'm unlovable, I know that's not true now, because I got to see that from getting to work with others. And when they see me, or when I get to see them deeply, I know how much I'm going to love them no matter what. Like, the stories just unfold. And yeah, I feel like I have to wrap it up pretty soon. I do. So I'm going to just read 2 more things and then I'll wrap it up. I think I'm on time, Kathleen. I think, sort of. I wanted to talk about the part about willing to believe. And then I love this. On page 46, God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. I love that. I love that because of how sure I was that I couldn't access this, but I got to just use the tiny bit that I had, and that ended up being enough. I wanted to add before I wrap it up, though, that I was so sarcastic about praying that I would tell Krista, my sponsor at the time, that I was like, no. And she was like, well, then you can't work with me. And I was like, fine. But I would pray to like unicorns and Santa Claus and sarcastic shit like that. And she would be like, are you, did you pray to the voices today? Or did you pray to the unicorns today? And I'd be like, yeah. And she'd be like, did they say anything? And the funny thing is, they did say things. And that flimsy reed became the steady hand of God for me. And I'm going to wrap up with I just love, this is honestly my favorite part of the big book. And you've read it a bunch of times probably, and you probably won't mind one more. The end of right before the stories. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation, what can you do each day for the man who is still sick? The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thank you.